All right, Warriors Nation. It finally feels like we've got some clarity in the whole Jonathan Kuminga situation, and I know a lot of you have been waiting for this moment. For weeks, there's been nothing but back and forth speculation, rumors, and a lot of frustration from both sides. But now, with Kuminga shutting down his social media accounts, it feels like we've hit the point of no return. For those of you who follow the league closely, you know this move is a classic signal that things are broken beyond repair. When a young player removes himself completely from the public spotlight while in the middle of contract tension, it usually means he's done trying to compromise and is ready to force a change. That change, for the Warriors, almost certainly means preparing to trade him. Think about it. The front office already had an offer on the table worth around $50 million, which for a guy still proving himself is not a bad deal at all. Yet Kuminga kept pushing for more, supposedly floating the idea of accepting a 3-year deal worth $60 million with a player option. But let's be real, was he ever actually going to agree to that? Probably not, especially when he's looking around the league at someone like Josh Giddey getting a 4-year contract worth $100 million, fully guaranteed. That kind of deal changes the landscape, and it makes a player like Kuminga believe he should be in the same financial bracket. The problem is that, while he's got all the potential in the world, he hasn't consistently proven he's that level of player yet. Now, here's where things get even more interesting. Kuminga is still only 22 years old, one of the youngest players in his draft class, and the clock is not working against him. If he were to sign a shorter contract now, let's say 2 guaranteed years with a player option, he'd hit free agency again at 25, right in his athletic prime, and likely with more development under his belt. That's the kind of timeline that would set him up perfectly to secure a massive payday while still being young enough to contribute at a high level for a long stretch. But instead of taking that long view, it feels like he and his camp are betting everything on the now. They want the financial security up front, even if that means burning the bridge with Golden State in the process. For the Warriors, the silver lining here is that the uncertainty is gone. There's no more waiting around to see if some last-minute compromise can be made. This is black and white now. Either Kuminga signs the tender that's already on the table, or he gets traded. And knowing how these situations usually play out, the trade option feels like the only real path forward. The front office can finally shift from wondering about negotiations to actively fielding offers, and that's a big step in the right direction. Of course, this doesn't mean it's going to be easy. You don't want to lose a player with this kind of talent for nothing, especially not one who has shown flashes of being a future star. At the same time, the trade market for him is tricky. Teams like Sacramento and Phoenix have been linked with interest, but sending him to a Western Conference rival comes with obvious risks. Imagine facing him in the playoffs 3 years from now, once he's put everything together and is finally delivering on his promise. That's a nightmare scenario the Warriors would rather avoid. Ideally, you ship him to the Eastern Conference, maybe to a rebuilding team like Washington or Charlotte, or even a franchise like Atlanta or Miami, where he'd get more freedom to grow. And speaking of Miami, that's one of those teams where you could absolutely see him thriving. Their culture has a way of pulling the best out of guys who have talent, but haven't quite figured it out yet. If Kuminga lands there, I have no doubt he'd become a real problem for opponents, maybe even developing into the kind of two-way forward the Heat are always searching for. And honestly, that would be great for him personally, even if it stings for Warriors fans. As long as he's not torching Golden State in the playoffs, it's something everyone could live with. What makes this situation frustrating, though, is how long the Warriors let it linger. By dragging their feet, they've allowed the story to dominate headlines and distract from bigger priorities. The longer you wait, the less leverage you sometimes have, because rival teams can smell desperation. And Golden State's window is not wide open anymore. In just a couple of years, a lot of the core contracts come up, and the franchise will need every ounce of flexibility to chase the next superstar or to build the next phase of this dynasty. They've even been linked with dreams of somehow bringing in Giannis or Jokic, though realistically, those kinds of moves are long shots. Still, it shows where their mindset is: keep the championship window alive for Stephen Curry as long as possible, and then smoothly transition into whatever the next era looks like. And that brings us to Steve Kerr. He's taken plenty of criticism for his struggles in developing young talent, And honestly, that criticism is fair. Kuminga, James Wiseman, and even Moses Moody to a degree haven't become the cornerstones fans once hoped they'd be. But Kerr's strength has always been getting established stars to buy into his system and thrive together. He's led the team to 6 finals appearances and 4 championships, and that's not something you can just dismiss. It reminds me of Phil Jackson, who people often criticize for only coaching great players. But the truth is, guiding those egos and those personalities to actual championships is a skill in itself. Kerr may not be the guy to turn a raw prospect into an all-star, but he's the kind of coach who can manage a locker room full of stars and get them a pull in the same direction. So, if the Warriors end up moving Kuminga for draft picks, role players, or trade exceptions, that doesn't necessarily signal the end of the dynasty. It might just be a pivot toward a different version of it. And with someone like Curry still on the roster, plus the ability to lure in free agents who want to compete for a title, the franchise remains in a strong position. The key is making sure they don't lose an asset like Kuminga for nothing. That's why this moment matters so much. The decision has been made, the writing is on the wall, and now it's time to act before the situation drags the team down any further. Now that we've established that Kuminga's time in Golden State feels like it's running out, the real question becomes what the Warriors can realistically get in return. Everyone wants to imagine a blockbuster deal where he's flipped for another young star. But the reality of the NBA trade market doesn't usually work that way. Most of the time, you're looking at packages built around role players, draft picks, and cap flexibility. That might not sound flashy, but when you're a franchise like Golden State trying to retool on the fly, those pieces can be more valuable than they appear. Second-round picks, for instance, don't get the attention that first-rounders do, but they're cheaper and more plentiful, and with the global talent pool expanding, whether that's from Europe, Africa, or the college system, teams are finding gems later in the draft more than ever. Building a stockpile of those picks could quietly set the Warriors up for sustained success down the road. Of course, there's always the emotional side of it too. For fans, it's hard to watch a young player who was supposed to be part of the future core decide he doesn't want to be there anymore. Kuminga came in as part of that 2021 rookie group with Moses Moody, and while both showed flashes, neither has really blossomed into the consistent difference-maker the team hoped for. That's the harsh reality of trying to extend a dynasty. Draft picks rarely become the next generation of stars when you're consistently winning and selecting late in the first round. Expectations were sky-high for Kuminga, and in some ways that set him up to disappoint, because unless he became the next Kawhi Leonard overnight, people were always going to feel let down. What makes this situation sting even more is remembering that Kuminga was a part of the 2022 championship run. Even though he wasn't playing major minutes, the narrative was that he was going to develop alongside Curry, Thompson, and Green, and eventually take over once that core began to age out. Instead, here we're just 2 years later talking about trading him before he ever truly got his shot to be that guy. Some of that falls on Kerr and the coaching staff for not trusting him more, and some of it falls on Kuminga for not consistently earning that trust. Either way, the partnership has broken down, and the team now has to make a tough call. If you zoom out, though, you start to realize that this is the story of dynasties across all sports. They rarely end cleanly, and the attempt to balance winning now with preparing for the future is almost always messy. The Spurs faced this after Duncan and Parker started to fade. The Lakers dealt with it after the Kobe era. Even the Bulls in the 90s collapsed after their 6th title because keeping everything together while planning for tomorrow is almost impossible. Golden State has managed to stretch its run longer than most, but that doesn't make it immune from the same challenges. Trading Kuminga might not be the fairy tale ending anyone envisioned, but it could be the necessary move to keep the Warriors relevant in the short term while laying the groundwork for whatever comes next. The timing of this decision also matters a lot. The Warriors currently have just 9 guaranteed contracts on the roster, which leaves 6 open spots to fill before the season begins. That flexibility is both a blessing and a curse. On the one hand, it means they can take advantage of other teams' roster crunches, scooping up players who might get waived or traded for nothing more than a trade exception. On the other hand, it means the pressure is on the front office to make the right moves and not waste those openings. With veterans like Malcolm Brogdon, Alex Len, or even Kelly Oubre Jr. potentially available, there's a chance to fill those spots with experienced contributors who can help immediately. But none of those additions matter if the Kuminga situation remains unresolved, because the cloud hanging over the team will keep dominating the conversation. And that's where Mike Dunleavy Jr., as the general manager, has to prove himself. Taking over from Bob Myers was never going to be easy, and now he's facing his first truly defining test. Can he turn a disgruntled young talent into assets that actually move the needle? Can he navigate the tricky waters of making a deal without giving up too much leverage? Can he do it quickly enough to keep the Warriors' focus on winning instead of constant drama? These are the kinds of questions that make or break a front office, especially when you're running a franchise with as much pressure and attention as Golden State. Meanwhile, for Stephen Curry, this whole saga has to be exhausting. At this point in his career, all he wants is a roster built to compete for championships, not drama over whether a young player is happy with his role or his contract. The front office owes it to him to resolve this quickly. The clock is ticking, not just on Kuminga's value, but on Curry's remaining prime years. Every wasted season is a season he won't get back, and the window to chase another title with him leading the charge is closing. That's why this decision isn't just about Kuminga. It's about Curry's legacy, Draymond's future, and Klay's ability to contribute as his game evolves. It's about whether the Warriors can find a way to remain contenders instead of slipping into mediocrity. In the end, there's no perfect solution. Trading Kuminga might bring back less than fans expect. Keeping him risks an unhappy player dragging the locker room down. But what's clear now is that standing still is not an option. With his social media purge, Kuminga has made his feelings known, and the Warriors finally have the clarity they've been waiting for. The next move belongs to them, and how they play it could determine whether this dynasty gets one more chapter or whether the book finally closes. Before we continue, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any exclusive Dubs updates. Let's keep going. The basketball world is buzzing with whispers that could redefine the NBA landscape. Sources close to team insiders suggest that FRANZ Wagner, the rising star who captivated Europe during the recent Eurobasket, is on the verge of signing with the Golden State Warriors. If the deal goes through, it could mark a seismic shift for both Wagner and the storied franchise, known for its championship pedigree and high-octane style. Wagner's performance in the Eurobasket was nothing short of sensational. Dominating on both ends of the floor, the German forward showcased a rare combination of scoring, vision, and defensive versatility that has scouts and analysts alike comparing him to some of the league's premier two-way players. While many anticipated a move to a team seeking immediate star power, rumors indicate that the Warriors, ever strategic and forward-thinking, see in Wagner the perfect complement to their dynamic roster. Sources say that Golden State's front office has been quietly courting Wagner for weeks, intrigued by his ability to stretch the floor with his shooting while also guarding multiple positions. In a league increasingly dominated by positionless basketball, Wagner's all-around skill set could slot seamlessly alongside Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green, giving the Warriors yet another dimension on both offense and defense. Imagine a lineup where Wagner can orchestrate a play, hit a three, and immediately switch onto a guard or forward defensively. A nightmare scenario for opponents. Of course, nothing is official yet, and whispers remain just that, rumors. But the mere speculation has already sent social media into a frenzy, with fans imagining the possibilities of a Wagner-Warriors partnership. Analysts are already theorizing how Steve Kerr might deploy Wagner in various lineups, hinting at small ball versatility that could make Golden State's attack even more lethal. If Wagner signs, it may not only elevate the Warriors' championship prospects, but also cement the young forward status as one of the NBA's most coveted two-way talents. As the rumor mill churns, one thing is certain. FRANZ Wagner's potential move to the Bay Area is the kind of story that gets fans talking, analysts debating, and opponents nervously checking scouting reports. Whether this tantalizing rumor becomes reality remains to be seen, but the mere idea of Wagner donning the blue and gold is enough to ignite a new wave of excitement in the NBA world. Stay updated exclusively with the latest Dub Nation news. Subscribe to our channel and hit the like button to keep getting daily updates on the Warriors. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. Your input is essential for the Dubs community. Stay tuned for the next video.